First thing you want to make sure is that you're on round stricken circular knitting setting. So this is my Addy machine. I've had this machine since 2017. She's a little older and my counter does not work. So everything that I make with my Addy machine, I measure it out. And this is also good to know when you're dealing with different types of yarn. So this is a thinner yarn. So I usually make a beanie hat up to 28 inches because I like the thick brims that they have, and I love pulling my yarn from the middle. If you're using a machine, pull your yarn from the middle. It makes it so easy to knit without having to unravel the yarn ball. Now I'm just getting ready to cast on. So I'm going to start at the first black needle and I'm going to go in and out, in and out. So you're going to see I'm going to go in the first one and then I'm going to crank it and I'm going the third one and then the one after that. And I'm just going to skip one each time until I get back to that first black needle. So from here, it's easy. All you have to do is open this clamp, put your yarn in here, and make sure that this thing is closed, because if it's not closed, it's going to it's not going to work. So with the Addy machine, since I don't have like a tension puller, I always hold it very lightly when I'm pulling the yarn out, because I noticed when I was a beginner, I used to always get holes and stuff in my knitting projects, and it was because the tension was just too loose to whereas the needles could not catch the yarn. So I'm about to speed past this because I have a attachment, of course, that I attached to my drill to just speed up this process, but I'm still holding that yarn on the left side, as you can see, but I'm not holding it tightly, just enough for it to go through my fingers without being stopped. So now I'm just getting my measuring tape and I'm just measuring. So I wanted to get 28 inches, but it's just a tad bit, just a little bit longer than 28. It's really not that big of a deal. I love thick beanies, so it's not a huge thing for me. So now I'm just going to come in with my scrap yarn. It's always going to be a yarn that's opposite color so you can easily cast off. So I'm going to pull out the pink yarn and I'm just going to grab a few little inches, not too crazy, and I'm going to cut it off, and then I'm going to put the pink yarn inside of the work. So before I continue, I am going to grab that blue yarn. So you'll see in just a second. I'm going to put the blue yarn from the tail, the open tail, inside the project, and you're just going to keep going. You don't have to recast on or anything. So where I'm pulling the yarn from is on the outside, and I'm just going to crank that for 3 rows. You really only need 3 rows. I always do 3 rows just to be safe. And of course I'm going to use my attachment because that's what I have it for. So now I'm just going to cut that off and I'm going to rewind it a little bit just to get that yarn out, and I'm going to put it on, and now I'm just going to crank it until all of the yarn is off of the knitting machine. So now let's get to the fun part. So you're going to have a long tube piece when you finish knitting. So I just undid this so you could see how long the tube is. But what you're going to do is you're going to fold this piece inward. Okay, so you're going to see. So I like to have the scrap yarn on the outside because you'll see in a second when I grab the yarn that's on the inside, which is the piece that we started with. Now you're going to go in the inside piece and you're going to grab that yarn. So this is like a wool type yarn. If you're ever knitting with the wool type yarn, be extremely careful, okay? Because right now I'm just going to pull it. I'm just going to pull this yarn, but I'm pulling it very gently because when you're working with this type of yarn, the yarn will break off if you pull it too tightly, and you're going to be looking crazy because the yarn is not gonna close, and you're gonna have open stitches that could unravel. So be very gentle in this process, but you're just gonna pull it tightly. So I'm going to leave like a little tail right here because I'm going to tie this piece of yarn to that top flap of yarn too. So now I'm getting my little crochet hook and I'm just making sure that this hole at the top is closed. Okay, so I'm crocheting knots in the yarn piece so that this hole could be closed. Now I'm just pulling that yarn out of the hat because sometimes it get unraveled in there, but be careful. And I'm just gonna add my needle I'm gonna add the yarn to the needle, okay? And I'm gonna do like one little knot. I don't like to do like double knots or triple knots or anything like that because I do a lot of projects and I don't got time to be trying to unravel knots on the knit needle. It's just too much. So I'm gonna make a knot on here and we're going to move to the next step. So the first thing I'm going to do is attach the first piece to the yarn. So I do this because what you don't want is for the hat to be, loose, or you don't want that bottom lap to come through. So we're going to make sure that it's secure. Now we're going into the first pink stitch that you see from the blue yarn. So this is going to close that top loop up, and we're just going to keep going through those little loops and making sure that, we close up the top. So I also like to go in like 3 times and just make sure that the top and the bottom are secured together because I don't want the two to become separated ever. So I'm just going to keep doing that. I'm gonna do this like 2 more times and then I'm just gonna close it out. So now that I've gone through that last loop, I'm just gonna put this yarn to the side and I'm just gonna pull this blue scrap yarn out. Now you should not have any problems. If you went through every single loop, you should not have any problems with the piece unraveling. See, it looks perfect. So now we're going to take that needle back, and you see that little hole right there. We're just going to wrap our needle around those stitches, and we are going to make sure that this hole is closed and secure. And sometimes, you know, the yarn might not go all the way through. Just to get a little crochet hook or anything small that you can pull that yarn through, because that's what we're going to do anyways. So now we're just going through again, making sure that this hole is tight. I don't want to see any hole at the top. I don't want it to be any air, nothing. So now, since the hole is closed, I'm going to take this crochet hook and I'm going to go in between the two layers of the hat, and I'm going to pull this yarn in between those two layers. So you will never see this layer, this string. Even if I turn it inside out, it won't be there. And see, no holes at the top. It's secure, it's good, it's ready to go, ready to put my logo on it. And yeah, so this is how long it is. Of course, we're not going to leave it like this, but you can wear it like that. But I love thick brims on my hats. So here you go. Here's how to make a thick knit beanie with your Addy machine.